Hello. Today we're talking about the apostrophe and we're following Fowler, the entry for the apostrophe, which appears on page 60. And the first thing I want to tell you is that actually the word apostrophe in English has two senses. It means the mark, right? The one that we know, used to indicate the omission of letters or figures or whatever. But there's also the apostrophe, which is an addressing of a usually absent person or a usually personified thing rhetorically, right? And that is what actually happens in Spanish. Ojo, porque el apóstrofe es perdón, el apóstrofo es el signo ortográfico. Y a ver, ahora sí. El apóstrofe es esa interpelación vehemente dirigida en segunda persona a una, varias, presentes, ausentes, vivas o muertas, seres abstractos, cosas inanimadas o a uno mismo. Es decir, que apostrophe is only one word in English, but in Spanish we have apóstrofe y apóstrofo. Y el signo ortográfico del que vamos a hablar hoy es el apóstrofo, right? So looking at the apostrophe here, we'll find the mark and possibly you will find here a very interesting entry telling you something about the apostrophe. Oh, wasn't this one? Don't worry, disregard this one. And we're going to see many elements that Fowler is going to tell us about, many uses of the apostrophe. And we're going to review first, we're going to get started with section B, right? The golden rules, which you know already. If you have a plural, the apostrophe follows the plural, right? The boys' gymnasium, right? It is boys, right? The apostrophe follows a plural, or even if it is a plural, an irregular plural, right? Women's handbags. Mother's Day. Sorry, Mother's Day, right, will be styled like this. And the same goes for Children's Day. It's children apostrophe s, right? Just in case, let's. Yes, Children's Day. And Father's Day as well, of course. The next point Fowler wants to discuss is the errant apostrophe, and I would like us to have a look at the word errant, just in case it is a false friend. It means doing something that is wrong, not behaving in an acceptable manner. So errant fathers, very careful, right? It also can mean not sexually faithful in knight errant, possibly, right? Let's check, just in case. I never checked. Has to do something like that. Who traveled, just who traveled around. Nothing wrong about the king. All right. This errant apostrophe, then, it means something that is wrong, not acceptable, right? And this is the one you find when it is, as Fowler says correctly, this is referred to as the greengrocers or the grocers apostrophe in a sort of derogatory manner, right? Because it is frequent for them to come up with, sorry, I click enter, but there's no need, apples, to provide the plural for apples, right? Which is of course not styled like this, but like this, right? It is a mistake, maybe something you had never imagined, right? But I would say later on, the one that we use like this is also an errant apostrophe, right? He doesn't consider it like that, but that's one too. Point number 4 is very important because it tells us that proper names that end in Y take the plural with an S only, like 2 Germanys, 2 Januarys, 3 Hail Marys. Basically, these are the main examples, right, that you will find, yes, you'll come across. Well, another legitimate use is point number 5, but the only thing I want to you to pay attention to here is the jokes on you, the jokes on him, which is a very nice idiom, right? Let's see if they have an entry. The others are simply abbreviations, right? So forget it. Let's go now to section C. No idiom for this one. Section C, abbreviations, and there's something very important about this, and that is that abbreviations will take an S. So let's say, well, it won't appear like this, but let's say I have several MAs. So here, right? Several MAs, then the plural. Remember the full stops or periods are for American English, right? Two MAs will be styled like this. Two, oh, I got the two MAs, right? And the same goes for MPs, which would be members of parliament. And again, the same goes for dates, right? The 1980s is never like this. Why? Because it's not a genitive, it's just a plural, right? There's no reason for the apostrophe. So it is just as errant as the greengrocer's apostrophe, right? So be very careful. It is not that the case when you say the class of 61, right? Because here the apostrophe is signaling that you have omitted two numbers, right? 19 for now. All right, there won't be apostrophes, he tells us, in abbreviations that are no longer perceived as abbreviations like flu or phone, right? Some people still use those apostrophes. And there are apostrophes when some letters are omitted, which you see a lot in literature, like in Forecastle, sorry, Ne'er-do-well, or in rock and roll, which is one that you probably know. Disregard the comment on miscellaneous, but the point is that we need to know that we need to know how to style these words, right? It's Guy Fawkes Day. For some reason, Guy Fawkes doesn't take an apostrophe, and it would merit an entry in point E, which is relinquishment of the apostrophe. We have just relinquished the apostrophe there for no reason, no apparent reason. There must be a reason. It's Valentine's Day, right? But it is apostrophe S, right? But it is April Fool's Day. The apostrophe comes after the plural because it's several fools, right? And the apostrophe comes after the S in presidents because it is two presidents, right? It's Lincoln and Washington, right? So it's a plural, president apostrophe S. Now, as regards possessives with personal names, there's a long story here, and I do want you to pay attention to this rule. All names, practically all names that end, proper names that end with an S will take the apostrophe S anyway, like Burnsies and Choices and Cousins, or Cousinses, sorry, Dickenses, Hickses, St. Jameses, Thomases, Zachariases, sorry. And that's the rule, right? Remember Bridget Jones' diary, right? It should have been Bridget Jones's diary, right? Because we say Joneses. We don't in cases where the ending with s gets the pronunciation is. So Bridget's, it's impossible to say, right? It's a mouthful. It is considered, and Jesus's, sorry, and Jesus. Without the apostrophe s, like this. Let's see if the dictionary, I think they don't give us an entry, but most people go Jesus is, but people, many others go just Jesus words, say, right, without the apostrophe s. So Jesus like this, or Jesus, oh, Jesus is, right? According to Fowler, the first one is an archaism, right? Now, in which cases do I only use the apostrophe after the name? For classical names, and this means Herodotus, Euripides, Socrates, because actually the rule applies, the ES pronunciation rule applies. It's very difficult to say Socrates is, right? So Euripides, Demosthenes, all of those take just the apostrophe. And the same goes for French names, but disregard French names. An interesting point that Fowler makes is that in point number 6, in place names, is that, oh, sorry, I skipped point number 5, which is with pronouns. We use the apostrophe, right? Anybody's game, others' books, the apostrophe for the genitive remains there. But I wanted to draw your attention to the fact that in England there are two Queen's colleges, one in Oxford, in which there's only one Queen, so it's Queen apostrophe S, and one in Cambridge, in which actually it's for two queens, and in that case, you get queens and apostrophe after the plural for queens, right? But that's not really important. Uh, One point that matters is the difference between group possessive, and the double possessive, right? The group possessive is when you have two elements that own one thing. The typical or easiest example here is my aunt and my uncle's place. It is a place of both your aunt and your uncle, right? As opposed to the double possessive, which is not here, only mentioned in name, but I'm going to include it, which is a picture of the kings. A picture of the kings, right? And now it is one of the many pictures the picture has, right? So there's ellipses here of the king's pictures, right? Whereas if I say a picture of the king, right, it's just one picture. I'm talking about only one in which he is being portrayed, right? So be very careful with what we call the double possessive, right? The example here was a friend of my mother's, a typical example, which is a friend of the many friends my mother has, right? As opposed to a friend of my mother, which is only one friend, right? Okay, then Fowler does not consider the multiple apostrophes being wrong, right? The final example is very good. It's Ronnie Finney, Flatty Finney's brother's son's second boy. Now, he says, this is correct, but clumsy. So try to stay away from multiple apostrophes. So notice we have many names. We have group possessive, multi-possessives, multiple apostrophes, double possessives. We have errant apostrophes, and we also have now, oh, I lost, it wasn't the errant, but the aberrant, but it's not here. Well, I missed it. I thought it was somewhere. Okay, now let's go then to the relinquishment of the apostrophe. I'm still trying to find it with my eyes, but it seems not to be here. The relinquishment of the apostrophe is just something for us to pay attention to, because we might say, well, why isn't there an apostrophe in Barclays Bank, Citizens Advice Bureau, Diners apostrophe club, Farmers apostrophe club? Why not? Just because, right? For no reason. The explanation that Fowler gives us is that the word is being used attributively. That's true, but why this not so in other cases? No apparent reason. So basically, that is just because, right? All right. Before I say goodbye to you, I want to go to Fowler. I'm still looking for the aberrant choice, right? Maybe I saw it elsewhere. All right. I want to make a couple of comments regarding the apostrophe, when it is a genitive, right? You know that there's the objective genitive when I say Peter's dog. Dog is the object of Peter, and there is a subjective genitive when I say Peter's novels. Initially, he wrote them, right? Let's choose, I don't know, Dickens's novels, right? He wrote them, right? And this is the subjective genitive. But what happens with something like the boy's murder, right? We have seen this as an example of ambiguity, because it could be that the boy was murdered or that he murdered someone. Basically, we don't know whether this is an objective or a subjective genitive, and that is very important. I don't know if you agree. And finally, I would like to go to Swan, right? He has an entry for possessives, which is 440. And in this entry, he discusses the question of measurement and the apostrophe S, right? As when we say a day's journey. A day's journey, right? And we use the same for other words that refer to a period of time, like delay, right? And for this, he gives us the example of 20 And you notice that now the apostrophe is after the S because it follows that rule. We know that when there's the noun is in the plural, we only get the apostrophe, right? So we need to pay attention to the fact that, to whether this is a plural or a singular. And this is basically having to do with the word that appears before. If it's 20, it's plural, 20 minutes day. And that's why an hour's drive is singular, and you have the apostrophe after the S, right? You have also combinations with, well, I told you, journey, delay, stay, right? 2 weeks stay, and now the apostrophe will go after the S because this is a plural, right? And or 2 weeks time, right? That's another word that shows measurement or imprisonment. Oops. 10 years imprisonment, that shows time, or a holiday, 10 years. Well, that's a bit of a long holiday, right? 2 weeks holiday, right? A 2 weeks holiday. Leave is another word that tends to appear here, right? 3 months leave, right? 3 months leave. This is in the plural. The apostrophe comes after the plural. And another typical case is 2 weeks notice when you tell your employer you're going to resign 2 weeks in advance, right? Apart from words for a measurement of time, we also have expressions with sake, right? And for this, the dictionary gives us all the explanations, right? We have for Pete's sake, because it's only one Pete. For old time's sake, por los viejos tiempos. For Christ's sake, there's only one. God's sake, there's only one. Goodness, the word ends in S. One heaven, one pity, right? And for old time's sake, the times are in the plural, right? Oh, I just said that. So be careful with these expressions, right? Now, there's one that shows time and doesn't take the apostrophe, and that is old, right? So you speak of a 9 months old baby, right? And also of, you may say, 3 weeks pregnant. With old and with pregnant, we do not use the apostrophe because these are adverbials, right? They're modifying an adjective. Weeks, 3 and weeks, right? So be very careful in those cases. We do not use the apostrophe with pregnant and with old. You know also that we can, to avoid this, we can use hyphenated expressions, right? And we can also say instead, as we were saying earlier, 3-day stays or 3-day stay, right? Well, I prefer the number. We need to spell out numbers, right? A 3-day stay, and in that case, day is in the singular because we have created an adjectival form, which is 3-day, right? Okay, but all the others with time, with notice, with holiday, well, holiday could be a 3-day holiday, right? Yes, we could say that, but not with time. A 2-week time, we don't use that, right? And leave also we prefer the genitive, right? The apostrophe S. So be very careful with these expressions, right? You may wish to review them or ask me any questions if you have any. Thank you. So that's all.